Mr. Ballerstein, thank you very much for being with us today. It's a great honor, actually, to have you on our team. The economic crisis have shaken up things. Do you think the financiers have a real plan of how to get us out of this crisis, or that would simply be impossible in the conditions of capitalism?
I'm not sure what a real plan is. I think their plan is to continue doing the same things they've always been doing and hope for the best, which I don't think makes any sense. But basically, when you talk of a financial crisis, we've had a financial crisis for 30 years. We have, since about the 1970s, people have been making money not through selling products. That hasn't made any significant amount of money since the 1970s, but through finance. And when you say they make money through finance, basically what you're talking about is speculation. And when you're talking about speculation, what you mean is inducing people to get into debt. And people get into debt because they need things immediately, and it seems a good idea, and the problem with debts is they have to be paid back. So that suddenly people said, oh my goodness, there's a financial crisis, but it's the fifth or sixth of the bubbles, and we're in the last bubble. We haven't finished the bubbles, because how have governments responded? The U.S. government, but not the U.S. government alone, has responded by what they call stimulus plans. Well, what are stimulus plans? The government gives money, which it doesn't have, to banks so that they can fix up their balance sheets. Where does the U.S. government get this money that it doesn't have? Well, it borrows still more, right, from other countries. They buy U.S. Treasury bonds, and we print money. Well, when you print money, you devalue money. But that's what we're doing. We're not the only government. It's easiest for the United States to do that because we're the reserve currency, and no one can stop us from printing money. But the end of the bubble hasn't occurred yet. It's a couple of years down the line, and then there'll be a real crash. Well, we are only seeing a minor crash now. We'll have a super depression.
So the worst is yet to come.
The worst is yet to come. We will have the last crisis will be a collapse of the U.S. dollar, which will end its role as a reserve currency in the world, and then we will have multiple currencies running around the world system, and we will have a vast expansion of unemployment.
What will happen to America after the crisis? Will it still be one of the key players? Will it still feel special?
Well, look, the U.S. hegemony is over. It's been declining since 1970. It had a catastrophic fall during the regime of George W. Bush, and nothing Obama can or will do will restore U.S. hegemony, although that's what he's trying to do, but he can't possibly succeed. But it's still going to be an extremely powerful, extremely wealthy country. It's not going to be Paraguay. I mean, but it's not going to be the dominant force in the world. It's not going to be Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State under Clinton, called the United States the indispensable nation. It's become the dispensable nation. Other countries can, if they wish, ignore the United States, and that's what some of them are already doing.
What will be the balance of the new geopolitical forces? What would the world configuration look like?
30, 40, 50 years from now, I have the remotest idea, and nobody else does. The next 5 or 10 years I can talk about. Okay. You see, what's happened with the end of U.S. hegemony, and is we are living in a truly multipolar situation in which there are 8 or 10 poles of significant power, loci around the world, which have enough strength politically and economically to be able to negotiate with other poles of power. Now, 8 or 10 poles of power, it's too many. See? So everybody says, well, I better link up with somebody else. So one of the things that's happening is everybody's looking for the best alliance. Well, take Russia. Russia is clearly a pole of power. It's one of my 8 or 10 poles of power, no question. It's a large country in area and reasonably large in population. It's got a fairly strong military. It's got economic resources that are important, and so forth. So it's a major pole of power, no question. So who is Russia going to link up with? Well, you know, it's not clear. Russia sometimes plays a game in which it says, well, we want to sort of link up with China and others. That's called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And then Russia plays another game in which it says, well, we sort of want to link up with France and Germany and so forth. That's called European integration of some variety. And then Russia plays a game in which it says, well, we used to be great friends with India. Maybe we can renew that kind of great friendship. And then Russia says now, well, we want to do things in Latin America, so we're going to sell arms to Venezuela because we want to create links there. And then your foreign minister says just the other day, well, we're trying to come to terms with the United States on nuclear questions, and maybe we'll get somewhere on these things. So if you look at that, what Russia is sort of trying out alternative links. Russia's not the only one. You see, I could talk about Germany trying out multiple links. I could talk about Brazil trying out multiple links. So we're going to have a game go on for the next 5 or 10 years in which countries are playing around with possible alliances which may fall into place. So maybe 10 years from now, there won't be 10 poles of power. There'll be 2 or 3 poles of power. My theory has always been that the United States is more likely to link up with the East Asian pole than with the European pole.
Why?
Well, I tell you, for several reasons. First of all, Europe would prefer that. Europe has been living since 1945 under a kind of cultural discomfort. They were the elder brother of the United States culturally and in many ways politically right up to the end of the Second World War. And what happened with the end of the Second World War is it flipped. The United States became the elder. Western Europe became the junior. Western Europe has never liked that. They swallowed it, they had to live with it, but it's always eaten at them. Not only in France, where they've made a big issue of it, but in Germany and even in Britain. It's always eaten at them, okay? And the only way that Europe can be Europe again, culturally, self-confident, is if they break with the United States. They don't say that, and they won't use that language, but I think that underlies a lot of the thinking, and not only of the French, but of Europeans generally.
Do you agree that nowadays America is trying to enlarge the European Union just by pure fact to weaken it?
Yes.
Because it's an arch
I've always
rival?
thought that. I thought that the whole point of expanding it to include Eastern Europe was to prevent Western Europe from coming to terms with Russia. And up to a point, it's worked. But Eastern Europe is shifting. It's changing itself, though there's still a lot of hostility and fear of Russia. After all, Russia kept these countries as satellites for 30, 40 years. They didn't like that. They liberated themselves from Russia. They don't want to come under Russia's tutelage again, but they don't want to be under Germany's tutelage either. And so they have this mythical hope of the United States is going to protect them. But frankly, when the chips are down, the United States is not going to protect Eastern Europe either against Germany or against Russia.
When you talk about different poles, what do you think will happen to the Arab world, especially after the U.S. has tried to democratize Islamic countries? What will happen to them in the future?
The Arab world will pursue its own interests, and it will see that the U.S. is losing wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan. They won't be doing well in Pakistan, and they'll see that the Israelis are not going to budge politically, and they will draw conclusions from that, which is that they have to pursue their own interests, so they will pursue their own interests. Everybody pursues their own interests. It's amazing how you want other countries to pursue your interests. That's crazy. And the Arab world will pursue the Arab world's interests. The United States will pursue the United States' interests. Russia will pursue Russia's interests. We can't moralize. We can't have Americans telling Egyptians they should do X because it serves U.S. interests. Egypt is worried about Egypt's interests. Russia is worried about Russia's interests. Iran is worried about Iran's interests. It's normal, and they will so act.